"Anna, can you room the next patient?" I asked, glancing up from my notes. "Sure, she'd be in room 5, she replied, heading down the hallway. I quickly reviewed the patient's history that Anna had written up. The lady had been complaining of a haze that seemed to come and go and occasional stabbing pains in her left eye that began several days ago. Nothing way out of the ordinary. Really, it was probably just a combination of floaters and dry eye. In my mind, the diagnosis was already locked and loaded, but just out of precaution, the patient was dilated to make sure there wasn't anything going on with her retina. Satisfied with my guess, I took off my readers, picked up my laptop, and entered room 5. "Mrs. Myers, it's good to meet you. I'm Dr. Ronald." "It's nice to meet you too," she replied, her voice tense. Mrs. Myers was a young lady, her hands clutching her handbag in the exam chair, her eyes hidden behind a pair of sunglasses far too large for her face. "Sorry for the sunglasses, Doc. Since yesterday, my eyes have been really sensitive to light." Faint alarm bells started to ring in my head, but I pushed the thought aside for now. "Oh, it's no problem. Why don't you tell me a little more about what's been going on with your eyes?" I asked, trying to sound reassuring. "Well, it's just my left eye, really. Since Saturday, I feel like my vision's been getting worse, like a fog's been building up, and I get these shooting pains from time to time. It almost feels like someone is poking my eye from the back. I had lunch with a friend on Friday who had similar symptoms at the time. I was wondering if it's a weird form of pink eye or something. Could be. How about let's take those sunglasses off, and we'll get a look at what's going on with your eye." "Oh, of course," she said, removing the oversized sunglasses. Under the slit lamp, her eyes seemed normal enough, with the exception of her left eye being somewhat bloodshot. With no clear explanation for her symptoms, I took out my fundus lens and peered into the back of her eye. I had caught no more than a glimpse of her retina before she shrieked and slapped the lens, knocking it rattling onto the floor. But even without that abrupt interruption, I would have dropped the lens in shock. In that brief, horrifying instant, I saw something that defied all logic. Her optic nerve was a pitch-black void, an abyss that seemed to swallow light itself. The optic nerve usually looks like a donut, with a dark orange outer ring surrounding a brighter inner circle. The inside of Mrs. Myers' optic nerve was pure darkness. A perfect little black circle, almost like a miniature black hole, had manifested in the back of her eye, absorbing all light passing into it. As my mind spun in a whirlwind of confusion, Mrs. Myers tumbled from her chair, collapsing onto the floor with a shriek that pierced the air. She clutched her hand over her eye, her voice rising in a crescendo of panic. Just then, Anna burst into the room, snapping me out of my stupor. We rushed to her side, dropping to our knees to help Mrs. Myers. She was inconsolable, moaning and rocking back and forth, her distress palpable. "Oh God, oh God, oh God," she wailed, her voice cracking with terror. "There's something moving in my eye." As her screaming reached an unbearable climax, Mrs. Myers suddenly looked up from her prostrated position. Her hand was still cupped firmly over her eye, but now we could see the blood trickling down between her fingers, a crimson stream staining her pale cheek. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched in horror. Something was moving beneath her skin, forcing her fingers apart from the inside. The sight was grotesque, a nightmarish struggle playing out just beneath her flesh. With a final, blood-curdling scream, Mrs. Myers collapsed to the floor, her body convulsing violently. Her arms fell limply to her sides, revealing the true extent of the horror. Jet black, spider-like appendages erupted from her eye, each one glistening with a wet, otherworldly sheen. They waved and writhed, searching for a grip on the slick linoleum tiles. Each movement left behind bloody scratches on Mrs. Myers' face, the lines of red contrasting starkly with her ashen skin. The appendages moved with a life of their own, a ghastly spectacle of wriggling limbs that defied all logic and understanding. The room was filled with the sickening sound of their scraping against the floor, mingling with the faint, gurgling moans that escaped Mrs. Myers' lips. The sight was more than I could bear, a vision straight from the depths of a fevered nightmare. Anna and I immediately fled the room, leaving Mrs. Meyer's twitching body and the ever-growing appendages writhing in a pool of blood on the floor. The next few hours were a disorienting blur. The police arrived, sealing off the clinic. Soon after, men in black suits took over, their presence cold and methodical. Anna and I were separated, each placed in stark, white rooms and interrogated, forced to recount every harrowing detail of what we had witnessed. The questioning was relentless, and it felt as though we were trapped in a loop of terror, reliving the nightmare over and over. Finally, we were released, but only after signing hefty non-disclosure agreements. I'm writing this in the bedroom now. I know I signed the NDA, but somebody needs to know. The idea of returning to work seems impossible. I think I'll take some time off, perhaps go fishing, or finally make a dent in the Netflix watch list I've been building up. But first, I need to take some Tylenol for this shooting headache behind my eyes. I have a story that has well and truly made me believe in the paranormal, not that I wasn't before, as I used to see them as a child. However, I'll get into the story, and sorry for any typos. Back in 2017, I went over to see my brother in Australia. The backstory: he moved over there with his now ex-partner and their 3 kids back in 2007. At the time I went there, the kids' ages were 8 Lily, 7 Tom, and 4 Harry. They lived in a bungalow in a suburb called Lemming. The room that I was staying in was at the back of the house, close to Lily and Tom's room, but far enough away to have privacy. Every time I go to my room, my hands would be freezing. The pets would absolutely refuse to step foot in there. I'd hear noises in the air con even though it wasn't on, or in the kitchen when everyone was in bed. I didn't think anything of it, if I'm honest. Fast forward a month into my stay. My brother had to go to work. He works in the mines, so would go to the mines for 2 weeks and come back to Leeming for 1 week. So in the house were just his partner, the 3 children, and me. In the past, Harry would wake up on the sofa at night when we were watching TV in the evenings and say things like "the people are going through the walls," and go back to sleep. We just brushed it off as a nightmare. I mean, he was 4 and never seen any scary horror films or shows. So around 3 days after my brother had gone to work, we were all having dinner at the table. The best way to describe the layout is the kitchen was a triangle shape. The dining table was just off the side of the kitchen in a nook, and there were 2 hallways. One you could see straight from the table, where my brother's room and the living room were, and another you couldn't see, where mine, Tom, and Lily's rooms were. Tom and Lily sat opposite me, Harry next to me, and my brother's partner at the head of the table, with her back to the hallway leading to my brother's room. As we were eating, Harry kept looking down the hallway we could see. We all looked at each other like, what is going on? Suddenly Harry starts crying and shaking and climbs onto his mom's lap. However, as he is there, he keeps looking over her shoulder at the hallway, and progressively gets worse. The kids were terrified, so they ran to me, and I tried to put the table between me and the kids. Obviously, if these ghosts wanted to do something, a table wasn't going to stop them. So after what felt like minutes, but were probably seconds, I grabbed both Lily and Tom and ran to where my brother's partner and Harry went. Once we were in my brother's room, we were shaken up. It was freaking terrifying. That night, we all stayed in my brother's room, all 5 of us. No way was I sleeping by myself after that. Then I started researching psychics and house cleanses. The works, because we all know bad ghosts feed off fear, and let me tell you, would have been a frenzy for them in the house. After a while, I found a lady who did them and arranged for her to come and clean the hell out of that house. My brother didn't believe us, and he, his partner, and myself all agreed not to tell the kids what this woman was doing there. So, the day comes by, brother is back, and the woman comes to the house. We take the kids to the park while she does her stuff. However, this woman also live streams her cleanses and talking to the ghosts with all those gadgets they use. So, you bet, while we were at the park, I was watching that live stream. As she goes through the house, she uses a spirit box and asks questions. I don't remember everything said, however, I'll never forget this bit. She thoroughly goes through the house and cleanses. Sage, salt on the windowsills, the works. Once it was all done, we went back to the house. As soon as we walked in the door, Harry looked around and said the people are gone. We never told him what was happening, but he knew. As soon as the lady left, my room wasn't freezing. The pets would come in and all was well. However, as the lady was leaving, she said to my brother, "Don't bring any rocks back next time." You see, my brother used to bring Lily, Tom, and Harry red rocks back from the mines as presents. The land my brother was working on was Aboriginal land, and some of the rocks had spirits attached to them. One of them, we were informed, was a witch doctor who trapped other spirits in our house. This was the one who wanted Harry. We never told this lady about the rocks, and they were hidden in the kids' wardrobe, so finding out she knew made our blood run cold. After all this, my brother and his partner broke the lease on the house and moved. All was well after that. But I'll always remember never to bring rocks to my house, as you never know what you're inviting home. I've always been fascinated by urban exploration, but this trip was different. This time, I wasn't just searching for abandoned relics. I was searching for people. When I heard about an abandoned village with a derelict hospital on the outskirts and rumors of people who had mysteriously vanished, I couldn't resist. Equipped with my trusty flashlight, notebook, camera, smartphone, smartwatch, medkit, and a sturdy pair of boots, I set off early one foggy morning, determined to uncover the truth. The village was eerily silent as I approached. Overgrown vegetation had reclaimed much of the area, and the old, dilapidated houses stood like sentinels, guarding their untold stories. I started with the houses, cautiously stepping inside each one, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. Each house felt like a time capsule, frozen in the moment when the last person left. Dusty furniture, faded photographs, and forgotten trinkets whispered tales of the lives once lived here. As I moved deeper into the village, my camera clicked away, capturing the haunting beauty of the decay. I meticulously noted down my observations, hoping to piece together the history of this ghostly place later. But it wasn't until I reached the hospital at the edge of the village that I felt a chill run down my spine. The hospital loomed ahead, its broken windows and crumbling facade giving it an even more sinister appearance. I hesitated for a moment before pushing the heavy doors open. They creaked loudly, as if protesting my intrusion. The air inside was stale, filled with the scent of mildew and something I couldn't quite place. My flashlight flickered as I stepped into the main hall, its beam illuminating the peeling wallpaper and shattered glass strewn across the floor. The hospital was massive, with long, winding corridors that seemed to stretch into eternity. I made my way through the desolate halls, my footsteps echoing off the walls. Room after room, I encountered remnants of a once bustling facility, rusted hospital beds, medical equipment covered in dust, and patient records scattered haphazardly. Each discovery felt like a piece of a puzzle, but there was a sense of dread that grew with every step I took. I reached a room marked records and felt a strange compulsion to enter. Inside, I found shelves upon shelves of old files. I picked one at random and opened it. The patient's name was scribbled in faded ink, but what caught my attention was the date. It was from the 1950s. My smartwatch buzzed, reminding me to check my phone. I had a signal, which was odd given the remoteness of the location. As I scrolled through my notifications, I noticed a series of messages from an unknown number. They were cryptic, with phrases like "you're not alone and they see you." My heart raced as I looked around, but there was no one there. I quickly pocketed my phone and continued my exploration, trying to shake off the unease. I entered another room, this one filled with surgical equipment. My flashlight beam caught something shiny in the corner. I approached and saw it was a notebook, much like mine. I picked it up and flipped through the pages. It belonged to another urban explorer, and the last entry was dated just a week ago. The final entry sent chills down my spine. It read, "I hear whispers. Someone's following me. If you find this, leave immediately. It's not safe." A sudden noise from the corridor made me jump. It sounded like footsteps. I turned off my flashlight and held my breath. Straining to listen, the footsteps grew louder, closer. My smartwatch buzzed again, displaying a single word: run. I didn't need any more encouragement. I bolted from the room, sprinting down the dark hallways, my heart pounding in my chest. The footsteps behind me quickened, keeping pace with my own. I burst through the front doors and didn't stop running until I was back at my car. As I drove away, I glanced back at the village. It seemed even more ominous now, a place that should be left alone. My phone buzzed once more. Another message from the unknown number. "You escaped, but not for long." I never went back to that village or the hospital. Some places are meant to remain forgotten, their secrets buried with time. And sometimes, those secrets are better left undiscovered.